So I think the biggest question for you right now is why did you decide to join Lightspeed versus raise your own fund?
So I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And I think the first thing that you have to ask yourself when you go through a process like this is like really what gets you out of bed in the morning? And for me, what I've realized is two things. One is I really am focused on just working with the best entrepreneurs. And I want to be in a position where I can serve their needs, be a great partner to them, and frankly grow with them and try to help them tap into their ambitions. That is what I love doing. And I really think that having the capacity to do that is just a lot easier at a larger platform. So that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is I really like playing with a team. And I think that venture can be a team sport. I think it can also be a very individualistic sport. And I think ultimately when I thought about starting my own fund, the question was like, well, who would I do it with? And what I realized was figuring out who that person would be minimum a 6-month process. The fundraising process thereafter would take 9 to 12 months. And then I'm looking at the clock and I'm realizing, wait, do I really want to be out of the industry, out of the market for a year and a half to 2 years and what I believe will be some of the most promising vintages of our time? That I think was just too hard for me to pass up in the end. And so here at Lightspeed, I get to play with the team. I get to really focus on my love for doing early stage venture, working with founders as early as possible. And I get to have and work on a platform that allows me to be what I think is like the right partner to those founders that have that really ambitious vision.
Hitting the ground running, and thank you for coming here and doing this interview right in the middle of onboarding. That's a lot.
Of course.
Well, I know this might be more of a personal question, but I'm really curious, structurally and economically, how do you swap funds? I know that there's a lot of extensive work that goes behind that, whether it's board positions, carry, do you get your carry bought out? How does this all work?
So on the board positions, like first and foremost, as personal a relationship as I have with each founder I work with, I have to remind myself that I was representing Kleiner Perkins on the board of all these companies that I served on. And I think with that, now that I've moved over to Lightspeed, there's this obvious question as to like who should do that on behalf of Kleiner Perkins. And so typically what you see in a situation like this is that those board seats do get transitioned. And my partners have been very thoughtful and very supportive of that transition and making sure that the founders that I work with are in good hands. So I'm really grateful for that. And so that's how that works. But you know, that's a very complicated process and an uncomfortable one, of course, because these are not just like people I work with, but they're lifelong friends, these founders, right? So that was frankly a very emotional experience for me and a difficult one for that reason. But I'm really, really grateful for how my partners at Kleiner Perkins helped me through that. So that's on the board seats. And then with respect to the carry, you can think of carry similar to the way a startup employee vests equity, right? So they're given an equity grant. That equity grant vests over some time period over multiple years. You can think of venture carry as similar. And so the reason for that, of course, is that when there is a transition like this, it's fairly objective as to like how much you vested and therefore how much you walk away with. And so that process was very clean. And you know, again, I'm just really grateful to all my former partners at Kleiner Perkins for how supportive they were of this move for me and how helpful they were in making it smooth.
Wow, that's really nice. With $30 billion in AUM, you've joined a mega fund. Mega funds are getting a lot of heat right now. They're raising larger and larger funds. We have names like A16Z, General Catalyst, Thrive, Sequoia, and they're exiting the traditional VC world into a new category that includes PE, credit, fund to funds, secondaries. How do you and how does Lightspeed think about this new environment?
So I think the first thing that comes to mind is like, I just think the scope of the technology investing industry is getting much, much broader. And it really kind of goes in lockstep with the way that these companies are being built and the resulting opportunity set that investors see out there. And I think what you're seeing with this group of funds that are choosing to go this route is that they believe, having been very close to these entrepreneurs, very close to the industry, that there are some pockets of the market that are just underserved. And I think their ambition lies in wanting to go and fill those pockets of the market with new products, new strategies, maybe larger versions of the same product. And so I think it's just a really exciting time in the industry right now because there's a lot of experiments being run, right? And I think with respect to Lightspeed, the opportunity we see just comes back to what I said about this new shape of company that we haven't seen before in this industry. These companies they're going after much more ambitious opportunities. These companies tend to be much more capital intensive, and they also tend to get much, much bigger when they're successful. And I think if you kind of layer that in the backdrop of all this, it's clear that these companies are going to have a funding requirement that we just haven't seen before. And I think Lightspeed's ambition is to step in and really be a great partner to those companies, because we think they can not only become really big, but drive outsized returns for our investors.